President Trump says he remains hopeful that he will be able to continue in-person rallies ahead of the November elections. The president says he doesn't want social distancing at his rallies because events he held before the pandemic were so successful.
Well, I hope we can do rallies. It's great for the country. It's great spirit. It's great for a lot of things. To me, it's a tremendous way of getting the word out. If you look at our success rate, we've had tremendous success. We win where we have rallies, including endorsements of candidates. Our success rate is, I think, unparalleled. There's nothing like it.
Well, the president's comments come as campaigns have turned to holding virtual rallies and live streams online. For more on this, I want to bring in Sarah Ewall-Wice. She's an associate producer for our political unit. She joins us now. So, Sarah, how exactly have we seen the 2020 race change because of this pandemic?
Well, everything that you know about campaigning has completely shifted to online. We used to have these in-person town halls. People would go and knock on doors. They would hold fundraisers. And now those have all had to move to the virtual space. And that is from the very top of the ticket, from the presidential race all the way down to the most local races when it comes to city council races and county executive races. We've spoken to a number of strategists, and they have said that they think this could impact how campaigning happens moving forward, maybe completely changing it to a more virtual reality all the way into the summer and the fall. We've also spoken to a number of organizing groups, and they say while they had planned to get out and knock on doors, they are now rethinking what they can do to rally voters. Obviously, some campaigns have had to get very creative. We've seen a pop-up of more podcasts. We've seen a number of fundraisers that have moved from the in-person shaking hand fundraisers with donors to events like a yoga session on Zoom. And also we've seen candidates who've been running for statewide office who've been saying, I'm going to give these parents a break. Instead, I'm going to read to their kids, give them some time. And that's how they're trying to be really connected with their constituents. Those with healthcare expertise have become a resource in this pandemic, and those with legal expertise have become also a resource. They're just really having to rethink how they connect, and that is what we've seen across the board.
Yeah, the campaign trail no different from all businesses dealing with this in this pandemic. You know, presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden has gotten some criticism this week for his digital strategy. Can his team keep up with what President Trump has been able to turn out when it comes to momentum and energy online?
It really remains to be seen. Vice President Biden does have a significantly smaller following online than the president. Obviously, he utilizes the internet in a different way than the president. His campaign has said they're obviously not going to hold any events that would endanger both the voters as well as their staff. But there have been critics who have said he needs to be having more counter programming to the president's daily White House press briefings. He needs to be more engaged with the rhetoric coming out of the White House from the podium. Obviously, they've had to really become creative with how they've done that. We've seen some virtual town halls with different groups. We've seen him holding appearances on TV from a studio set up in his Delaware home. They've been putting out different content on Twitter and on Facebook. So they really had to rethink this, and they've really had to try and shake things up on their end. Obviously, his digital strategy, his campaign has said, is one of both empathy and compassion, where critics have said maybe he needs to be serving up more red meat. But they have started to do things like yesterday, they put out a video of the vice president talking about China and trying to provide counter programming to the argument that the president has been making that Biden is soft on China. Additionally, we've seen some larger super PACs, both pro-Biden and pro-Trump, really start to fill the void on television. They've been airing ads both about the response to the coronavirus pandemic, as well as going after both candidates from either side over their stance on China. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens as more states start to potentially allow events. It could be a very slow process moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And you also have reporting on healthcare ads and how candidates have been turning to that issue during this pandemic. That kind of makes sense. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Democrats have been using healthcare as a talking point, obviously, since the 2018 midterm. That was something that you saw them talking about on the campaign trail with the Affordable Care Act. They have been talking about it regularly during the primary. You saw exit poll after exit poll showing that that remains a top issue for Democratic voters as they head to the polls. But what we've seen in recent weeks is that a number of Democratic outside groups have started spending on healthcare ads. This comes as the president issued the emergency declaration. We saw about $82 million in spending for Democratic groups as well as candidates skyrocket. They've been airing ads that have just really been out there reminding folks, specifically in some of these Senate races, how Republicans have voted on healthcare in the past. So they've really leaned into this as people are starting to raise concerns about healthcare. Of course, this pandemic raises an entirely new question about how the system should be run. On a separate side, Republicans have also been airing ads. Theirs, it seems to be that they've been leaning more towards the leadership side of things. We saw Senator McConnell, who had an ad out that really focused on what he has done in the response to the coronavirus. Other Republicans have had ads that are thanking first responders and healthcare workers. So they've really also been trying to put out ads. It's just a very different from the Democratic messaging, reminding voters of their talking points that were so strong during 2018.
Sarah Ewall-Wice, I want to thank you very much for joining us with an update on Politics 2020. Thank you, Sarah.